It is my pleasure to introduce our next session. The session title, as you can see here on the screen, is Pronouns Beyond the Binary and Even They. Our presenter is Anna L. EldenBrady. Anna is one of 3 coordinators for the Michigan 4-H Tech Wizards Youth Mentoring Program. Anna has been coordinating programming sites in Muskegon County on the shores of Lake Michigan since 2018. When not enthusiastically diving into STEAM projects with the youth and adults, Anna happily explores diversity, equity, and inclusion areas and searches for ways to share with colleagues and community partners. And you can read more about Anna on our website. Anna, thanks so much for joining us today.
I'm very happy to be here. As Paul mentioned, I'm Anna L. EldenBrady. My pronouns are Z, Zer, and Zers, and I am with Michigan State University Extension, and it is a lovely day over here in Muskegon County today. For youth in my program, the Tech Wizards, meet with their mentors to bond over STEAM field projects, which is absolute fun to coordinate. Please do make sure that you are muted right now. And if you don't want to appear on screen when you're being recorded, turn off your video. We will do questions after. I can't really see the chat right now, but you can go ahead and throw questions and comments in there, and we will see if we can get to them at the end. If we can't, I will save the chat, make a list of those questions, and upload it into our Google Drive resources file with answers there. So hopefully, though, we will have time to do that at the end. All right, so now on to some pronouns. So I shared with you that my pronouns are Z, Zer, and Zers. This is one of many pronoun sets called neopronouns. They may look unfamiliar to you, and that's okay. That's exactly why I'm here today. In some settings, though, or with some people, I still do use she, her, and her pronouns, or traditionally feminine gendered titles like being mom or an auntie. Though this might seem unusual to you, some folks who are non-binary do use 2 sets of pronouns, and for a number of different reasons. If you see me or anyone else you know that's non-binary using different pronouns, whether that's in a Zoom call or maybe on an email signature or whatnot, or they're not using any at all, there might be a very good reason why. So please be aware of this. Some spaces are safer than others. And I am noticing that it took my pronouns off of my name on my screen here. So guess what? I'm going to click rename and we are going to add pronouns, hopefully not skip slides, to the end of my signature here, or my name. Now you can be reminded by either.
The same thing happened to me, Anna.
Wow. Yeah, for some reason, this one likes to erase them. I don't know why. Every time I keep having to add them to each session today, but that's all right. We have the technology. So you might also, though, see some people who use dual pronoun sets. You might see she/they in an email, for example. That means that it's okay to use both, and switching between them is often encouraged. So if you only use the binary pronoun in that, say you see she or they, and then you only call someone she, you're kind of erasing the non-binary part of that person's identity. So do switch. It can be very affirming. Introducing ourselves with our pronouns normalize the practice of not assuming gender based on appearance or assumptions or based on names or traits. And it opens up the space for others, particularly transgender and non-binary individuals, to disclose their pronouns in a place where they know they aren't being singled out. When everyone introduces themselves with their pronouns, no one needs to be in a place where they either have to sit in the discomfort of being misgendered consistently or risk outing themselves in a space where they don't know if they are safe or will be among allies. One thing to note, when we do ask about the pronouns of others, we shouldn't ask for preferred pronouns. If one set of pronouns is preferred, it infers there's another set of pronouns that someone might use that could be acceptable, even if they aren't the preference. Think of it this way. We don't ask people if they prefer ice cream without knowing what they would prefer it to. We ask something like, would you prefer ice cream or frozen yogurt? Would you prefer ice cream or cake? When we ask for preferred pronouns, the language assumes there's something against which that preference stands. And often there isn't. So when you ask or when you introduce yourself, take care of the language you use. So we're going to journey a little deeper into the use of pronouns just beyond us in the present day. We're going to start with a story of a person. Their portrait is on the screen. On November 29th, 1752, an individual who would become to be known as the public universal friend was born. At birth, the friend was given the name Jemima Wilkinson and assigned the gender traditionally associated with that name. The friend grew up girl. The friend was born into a Quaker family in Rhode Island. Little is known about the friend's early life, but sometime in the mid-1770s, the friend began attending New Light Baptist meetings, something that would get them disciplined and removed from their previous religious community in 1776. Their sister was dismissed at the same time for having a child without being married, and their brothers were also then dismissed in 1776 for service in the military. And the friend's 1776 only got worse. In October, they suffered from a disease, probably typhus, that had their friends keeping a death watch. The fever broke after several days, and the friend told those around them they had died and been given a new spirit, one charged by God to preach, and one renamed the Public Universal Friend. Now that's a reference to the title that traveling Quaker preachers took, which was a public friend. The friend refused to answer to any other name and was referred to, even in writing, as their new identity. Many diaries and period references using no gendered pronouns for them. When asked about gender, the friend would say, "I am that I am." True to this non-binary nature, the friend would also dress in clothes associated with both genders, petticoats and skirts with a tie or collar, or in a jacket or no hat, or in clerical robes. The story of the Public Universal Friend goes on to include the formation of a religious society and other endeavors until their death in 1819. But the point here isn't to detail this very interesting figure and their moment in the religious history of the United States, but rather to acknowledge the documented existence of a visible non-binary person in the historical record of colonial America who, at best we know, did not use gendered pronouns. This non-binary life isn't new. So now on to the pronouns themselves. A part of speech most people don't think about, yet transgender and non-binary people tend to take their time considering. Language historians dig pronouns too. And for those of us who are both non-binary and absolute etymological nerds, well, pronouns are absolutely delightful. Pronouns are a part of speech we all use to refer to someone or something without using their/its name. We use them all the time without even thinking about it. Common singular personal gendered binary pronoun sets are she, her, hers, or he, him, his. Singular personal pronouns that aren't gendered are sometimes called genderless pronouns. The most common singular personal genderless pronoun set is they, them, theirs. I do want to note that this is not a universal grammar construction, though. There are over 250 languages in the world that do not have gendered pronouns at all, and others that have gendered pronouns, but also have a genderless personal pronoun, or some that have no pronoun for referencing people that isn't gendered. For example, many European languages have strict gender structures, but Finnish has only one pronoun to reference any person, and it has no gender. Some people don't want to use pronouns to indicate their gender, or their gender is outside of the gender binary. These individuals will use a genderless singular pronoun. Many people use they, them, or theirs, but there are also people, like me, who use different genderless pronouns. And we will get into those in a moment, but first we're going to briefly touch on the history and use of the singular they. Often people object to the use of the singular they because they say it isn't correct, or that it's a new usage, but it's not. We generally use it when we don't know someone's gender. For example, someone left their umbrella. Oh dear, I hope they come back for it. So we're going to start with a little poem from Dennis Barron on Twitter. He says, "Roses are red, violets are blue. Singular they is older than singular you." And he's actually very much right. This is true. The earliest written example of the singular they in English appears in 1375. This means it was likely used in spoken communication significantly earlier, particularly if it was used in Middle English dialects used by people who couldn't write. It's one thing to always ask when you're studying language, who wrote it down? Pronouns haven't stayed the same through time. According to Merriam-Webster's website, they, their, and them have all been in use in various ways for 6 centuries and, quote, have been disparaged in such use for about 2 centuries. But what came before? Well, we're going to look a little bit about that comment about the singular you here. Well, we started out actually using ye in the same way we use y'all these days. There was no plural version of the word you, as we say it now, like you do this, meaning you, the group. In fact, the word you was only used to address someone formally. So if you were talking, say, to the bishop or the local baron, the formal singular was the proper word to use. So what did you use? Well, I shall tell thee, thou wouldst use thy good grammar, and wouldst teach thy children to do the same. The responsibility to do such is thine and thine alone. The form, instead of you, yours, etc., was thou, thee, thine, thy, and thine. When it finally started to change, when you became more of a casual part of speech, it was not universally accepted. It was met with the same kind of resistance we now see to people who say we can't use the singular they. In fact, the Quaker founder George Fox wrote an entire book in 1660 specifically to detail all the reasons he hated the word you, and made it clear that he felt everyone who used it was a fool. So moving on toward how this relates to they. Bussel's article titled How to Use Neopronouns According to Experts and Those Who Use Them says, quote, some people balk at using they them pronouns because often they're plural, but there's a rich history of using it and others as singular pronouns. Gender neutral pronouns used to be the norm in English because the two existing gendered pronouns had become all but indistinguishable from each other by the 12th and 13th centuries. Their pronunciations had grown so similar. According to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee's LGBTQ+ Center, the pronoun she was actually created in the 1100s in part to acknowledge women grammatically instead of letting he, him, his pronouns be the default for everyone. Now in 1789, William H. Marshall actually recorded the use of a singular pronoun without gender that was being used for anyone in a certain English dialect. It was ow, or it's ou. This comes from a Middle English use of a in the same way. And even that comes from Middle English gendered pronouns, he and heu. I might be butchering pronunciations. I haven't heard much Middle English spoken. But at the same time that Marshall was exploring this history and looking at these pronouns, Robert Baker suggested using just one as a neutral pronoun. Someone left one's umbrella. I hope one comes back for it. So the singular they isn't new. It's been written down for 646 years, even as a personal pronoun. It shows up in colloquial speech, likely for more than 7 centuries, and is documented in Chaucer, Shakespeare, and Austen. So what other pronoun sets are out there? What are these neopronouns, these singular non-binary pronouns that go beyond they, them, and theirs? What is this neopronoun business? Where did they come from? Why do they exist? And who is using them? Well, we're going to start with a definition from UNC Greensboro's Office of Intercultural Engagement. Neopronouns are a category of neo pronouns that are increasingly used in place of she, he, or they when referencing to a person. Some examples include sie, them, zer, sie, her, hers, and am, ihr. Neopronouns can be used by anyone, though most often they are used by transgender, non-binary, and or gender non-conforming people. So in English, neopronouns aren't actually very new. Am, ihr is one of the older sets of neopronouns, the earliest form of it showing up in the 1890s. The most common current version of it appeared around 1975. Now in 1858, though, the word thon, a contraction of that one, was coined by Charles C. Converse. Converse, an attorney and hymn writer whose credits include the well-known hymn, What a Friend We Have in Jesus, began promoting this new pronoun in 1884. It was met with mixed reviews. A number of language experts, though, liked the suggestion of having this neutral pronoun. Conversations about gender-neutral form of address prompted another important question around the time. And it was asked in a publication by a writer who's only known as Z at this point. And he asked for a relationship-neutral form of address for a woman that this individual didn't know. And in 1901, Ms. first arose to fulfill that request. So the conversations about a gender-neutral pronoun spurred on conversations about gender-neutral, or rather relationship-neutral forms of address. We're going to skip back to the word thon again, go back to our neutral pronoun, and it actually first appeared in the dictionary, in Funk and Wagnall's Standard Dictionary of English in 1897. So again, this idea isn't new. It was added to Merriam-Webster's Second New International Dictionary in 1934, but it was dropped in 1961 because it really didn't take off in common usage. But these aren't the only pronouns that have been in use over the past 200 years. There have been over 100 sets of agender pronouns either in use or suggested since the mid-19th century. So from that article on Bustle I referenced before, quote, language is about evolution, and that can happen across broad swaths of the internet, through Tumblr, or in real life communities. Queer youth of color in particular have a knack for tapping into the deep potentials of even the smallest words. Around 2004, for example, Black middle schoolers in Baltimore popularized yo as a gender-neutral pronoun to refer to other young people whose gender was unknown, or for specific people being pointed out in a discussion. Like other forms of language, neopronouns rise up when there is a cultural need to get creative with concepts that current words are inadequate to describe. So really, these new pronouns are sometimes new, but draw on a very, very old history. To expand on the pronoun yo, Jacob McWilliams includes a chart in his zine titled What to Do If You Use the Wrong Pronouns For Me, which was printed in 2017, and he conjugates them as follows. Yo laughed, I called Jan, that is yo's hair, that is yo's, yo likes yourself. So now let's look at some other examples of neopronouns. This chart on the screen is not a comprehensive list, not at all. There are so many variations of neopronouns in use. It can be actually hard to find a chart that lists everything. And given how fluid language is, it's unlikely it would be all-encompassing for very long. I find that fluidity to actually be one of the most beautiful things about studying language. There are 4 different cases or places in which these pronouns are used in language on the chart. Subjective, where the pronoun replaces the subject of a sentence. So she went to the store. Objective, when it's not the subject, but related to something the subject is doing. Matt talked to him. Possessive, where something is owned, that is her hat. The hat belongs to her. And the reflexive case, himself or herself being the binary examples of those. So in this chart, the forms that are there are sie, zer, zers, zerself. Those are the ones I use. Sie, her, hers, herself. Sie, zem, zers, zerself. Her, hers, herself. E or a, er, ers, emself. V, ver, vers, verself. And fe, fair, fairs, fairself. And if I have pronounced these any differently than someone you know who actually uses them, please, of course, use their pronunciation when you refer to them. So I'm going to use one in a sentence here. We'll use Faye. It's one I particularly like saying. So Faye went to the store. I talked to Fair. That is fair hat. That hat is Fair's. Faye can do it fair self. If you'd like to practice this, I do suggest a tool that's found on the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee's LGBTQ+ Resource Center page called Gender Pronouns. And I will put that link in the chat once we've wrapped up this, in case if I open the chat, who knows what I'll accidentally do to my sharing screen. So we'll get to that in a little bit. That resource will allow you to select a pronoun set and then see it in its different forms and then practice how to use them. So it's very cool. As new as this is to many folks, and even to me as someone who uses them, imagine being the only person you know who ever uses your pronouns. It can be pretty isolating. People who do use them would generally rather you try to use their pronouns and conjugate them wrong than that if you just not try at all. It shows you care. Just think of it this way. If it were you and someone, say, was coming from one of those languages that doesn't use gendered pronouns, would you be happy if that person just kept using the wrong pronouns for you or called you it because the change was hard? Or would you want them to learn the pronouns that make you the most comfortable and keep trying? Or to use a comparison from Tumblr user Dog Roseberry, intentionally neglecting someone's pronouns and assigning them the ones that you see fit is the same as ignoring someone's dietary restrictions and handing them a steak after they've told you multiple times that they're vegetarian. Don't be offended when they reject your food. So what if we mess this all up and misgender someone or use the wrong pronoun? Well, correct yourself and move on. A simple sorry and correction will go a long way. You don't need to make a big deal out of it, as that puts the spotlight on your needs and not on the person who has been wrong. Just think of it like a name. If someone calls me Anne and then realizes it's Anna, a quick, oh, sorry, Anna, is about all anyone needs to say. This is illustrated nicely in the screen capture of Finley Myself's blog on Tumblr on this slide. I'll read off the speech bubbles. As Finley mentioned earlier when as Finley mentioned when sometimes the little signs of progress can make a world of difference. To expand on this, let's go back to that document I referenced from McWilliams, the what to do if you use the wrong pronouns for me. He states that he clusters people into categories based on how they deal with his gender identity. These are his 4 groups, and I'm quoting here. Group A, people who basically never have trouble remembering my pronouns. This is my friend Jake. He's only been square dancing for 10 months and he already dances plus. B, people who basically never use the correct pronouns for me. Jacob's here to pick up her cat and pay her bill. She's such a good cat mom. C, people who sometimes screw up my pronouns and make a big deal out of it every time it happens. I was just telling Jake that she needs to, oh my God, I can't believe it. I just did that. I've been practicing and I never get it wrong when I talk about you to other people. God damn it, I'm such an asshole. D, people who sometimes screw up my pronouns, correct themselves and move on. I was just telling Jake that that he needs to see the new Ghostbusters movie because he'll find it hilarious. McWilliams continues, I would like to suggest that if you're not someone who already falls into group A, most people don't, and that's okay really, you should work on being someone who falls into group D. Here's why. Group B is totally undesirable because it's the group for transphobics and people who just don't give a shit about other people's needs. Group C is for people who commit a faux pas and instead of taking responsibility for their mistake, make it about them and their needs. They're embarrassed and need reassurances that I'm not mad or that I think that they're still a good person. I don't necessarily get mad at people for misgendering me, and I don't think that someone's a bad person for using the wrong pronouns for me. I do get frustrated when I'm put into the position of having to focus on how you feel because how you feel isn't really the issue in the particular moment. Group D is for people who are working on getting it right, but sometimes get tripped up, but who want to deal with their mistakes without making it worse or bigger. And that's from McWilliams's descriptions. So what should happen though, if you misgender someone and then you're corrected? Thank someone for the reminder. Twitter user Dan Owen says, if you misgender someone and are corrected, please say, thank you, rather than, I'm sorry. Apology kind of forces that person to tell you it's okay, which is strange. Thank you suggests you understand it's not okay and you're grateful to have been corrected. And this kind of ties back into Jake McWilliams' categorizations of those people's that he groups on their reactions. Don't be group C. Remember, mistakes are ours and ours to own. I do want to caution you though about publicly correcting pronouns. Some places aren't safe for non-binary and transgender people, and you might need to find a way to privately check in with someone as to whether or not they feel safe being out or having their pronouns corrected, or if they'd rather not. It's tricky, yes, and it's most definitely why we need to have not only visibility and representation for our non-binary and transgender community members in our schools, universities, workplaces, neighborhoods, but also to have an army of dedicated accomplices and co-conspirators ready to work to make spaces safer without centering the complaints of those who are cisgender over those needs of those who are non-binary and transgender. And what does it feel like when someone refuses to even try to use the pronouns that suit someone best? Well, in Archie Bongiovanni and Tristan Jimerson's A Quick and Easy Guide to They Them Pronouns, published in 2018, Bongiovanni says, everyone reacts to being misgendered differently. Every time I'm misgendered, it feels like someone is adding a brick to my backpack. As the day goes on, there are more and more bricks. By the end of the day, I feel like I'm being crushed by the seemingly unending burden of the gender binary. Jimerson asks, aren't you being dramatic about this? To which Bongiovanni replies, maybe to you, but to me and other people, being misgendered can make us feel all sorts of ways. Even if you don't get it, you should learn how to use the pronouns people request because you like them, love them, or work with them. And we all got to share space on this terrible dying planet. Even though you don't intend to hurt non-binary folks, when you assume our gender or misgender us, the impact is real. And as a cis person, you're less likely to experience being misgendered. I've had people tell me to my face that my pronouns don't matter. Jimerson realizes that's horrible. That's basically telling you that you don't matter. And that's what it comes down to. So given how tenuous safety can be, why do people use neopronouns? The simplest answer to that is because they want to. It feels better than using other pronouns. In Michigan State University's LGBTQ+ Resource Center's Understanding Pronouns workshop, one thing that stands out to me is that when someone tells you the choice of pronoun that they'd like you to use, it doesn't tell you anything about their gender. They're just telling you their pronoun. And really what they're asking you to do is just to respect their identity. So why use a neopronoun instead of just they? Well, going back to that article on Bustle that I referenced earlier, Justin says, and after everything I've been through with my gender, I deserve something shiny and just for me and other people like me. Pronoun variety isn't about imposing on anyone, Tal says. It's about celebrating everyone. I'm not trying to take away your amazing binary pronouns or your they, them pins. Whatever pronouns work for you are brilliant and amazing, and I'm happy for you that you have them. But I'm happy with Zzer because these were the first pronouns I heard and was like, aha, yes, that fits me. My neopronouns expand my world and celebrate my own gender while shaking up violent gender assumptions. And that's really what it's all about. And really, honestly, you don't need to understand why someone uses non-binary pronouns. It's not really any of anyone else's business. Though if you're close enough, they might not mind telling you. Or to quote from a quick and easy guide to they, them pronouns, you aren't owed any explanation or reason for someone wanting to use different pronouns. It's your responsibility as a decent human being to learn to use that whatever pronouns they ask you to. So who can use these pronouns? Anyone. Most commonly, transgender and non-binary people use them, but anyone who wants to use them is welcome to. And when we come across someone who's using these unfamiliar pronouns, the simplest thing to do is to use them. But if they're so funky and it's hard to figure out their pronunciation or you're not used to them, it is absolutely okay to say, your pronouns aren't ones that I've heard before. Could you pronounce them for me so I get it right when I'm using them? Most of the time, someone using these pronouns will be happy to share and excited to feel seen. It's a joy to know someone cares and wants to get it right. And to that point, this quote is one that I like to kind of wrap this in, and it is, all of us need all of us to make it, by Reverend Teresa Inez Soto. This isn't optional. We all need all of us to make it. It's about the survival and safety of our kinfolk on this pale blue dot. And I do want to acknowledge, though, that some of you might not feel safe or ready to use your pronouns publicly. And if that's you, or if you don't know how, or there's some reason why you are still not, that's okay. And I want you to know that you are valid, you belong here, your identity is still your identity, and you're not alone. So thank you, all of you, for our time together. I'm going to stop my screen share so that I can see all of y'all's lovely faces. So.
Anna, we can take time for questions or comments. We don't have a session right after that, so I'll let you kind of dictate how you'd like to move forward.
Well, I'm scrolling through the comments right now to see if there's anything that we have about questions. I don't see any questions there, but if anyone has anything you'd like to comment on, that's wonderful. I do want to give a shout out to Ruth Ann Jones at the Michigan State University Special Collections Department in the library, because no, Melissa, that's not quite the one that I was going to post in the chat. I'll get there in just a sec. Thank you for reminding me, though. Ruth Ann was the reason why I was able to find that quick and easy guide to they, them pronouns, and the zine that McWilliams published. Neither of those are easily available, or rather, the they, them pronouns is, the zine's not. Yeah, it was something that I hadn't thought to find. And she, after a conversation, was just like, here you go. Yes, the slides are in the shared documents. There's actually a PDF there currently of the entire presentation, including all of my notes and some of the language that I skipped over to make things a little briefer. So that is in there as well. So you can pick that up, and it's full text with the slides there as in it. Let me grab that link for y'all to practice pronouns, because it is really awesome. I have to remember which slide it was on so that I make sure I grab it. But go ahead and while I'm grabbing that, ask me anything you'd like on this. If you want to ask me about my own pronouns or whatnot, I also am cool with that. And I'm comfortable with silence if you need a minute to think. Well,
And
can you
I've
see
got a
my
question.
pins? My pins? You want to see my guys on here? Okay, I can move up here. I've got my funky Z0 pronoun button. And this is just a small number of my pin collections. We have my non-binary gang, flower. And this guy, this is the transgender, the old school transgender symbol with the different genders in the corners, with the Deathly Hallows symbol it's combined with from Harry Potter. That is a pin that was created by Jackson Bird, who was one of the founding members of the Harry Potter Alliance. Jackson transitioned publicly within the Alliance throughout his time doing activism there, and created this pin a few years ago. But then when the J.K. Rowling thing hit last year, Jackson's response was, you know what, we're going to bring it back, kind of as an in your face. Jackson has never really shied away from being confrontational when it comes to J.K. Rowling's very obvious transphobic comments, stances, whatever you want to call them. I have thoughts, but they're not polite to say regarding that. It's Jackson is a wonderful person to actually listen to on some perspective on that. Yes, will it waffle? Exactly. For Liz in our comments here. Yes, that is Jackson. If you look up the Harry Potter and the Sacred Text episode that Jackson guest stars on, there is actually some commentary there as well on his and other transgender and non-binary individuals on that particular author. So very good commentary. There's my website. I finally found it. So I can give you that link. Boom, in the chat. Link is also on the PDF, as well as links to the various sources, references, Tumblr blogs, etc., that I referenced in the presentation. So if you want to find any of them, I tracked them down. The ones with the screen captures were from, and those are in that PDF. So feel free to download that and look everybody up.
Danny's posted another question.
Where did I get the non-binary flower one? That one actually, I was at Texas Tech's Refractions conference, along with several of my colleagues who are on here as well. And when I was there, I kind of went a little overboard on the participation in the forums, and that got me some swag. And there, I think it was it Sammy's Got Pride is the name of it. One of y'all pitch in if you were there and remember, but that we got a pin or whatnot from that particular shop as our swag for being rather fond of chat forums. That's where I got that one. As a millennial who came of age during the time of the chat forum online and fan forums, I am very fond of them and use them regularly. How do you explain neopronouns to people who are just figuring out they, them? That's always a tricky one because it is tough. People are like, well, they, them is just, a pronoun. Well, I've heard it also explained of, well, you've got some people who you never call Robert. If he asked you to call him Bob, you wouldn't just call him Robert because it makes you feel more comfortable. Well, a neopronoun is just another word in this space that makes somebody feel more comfortable. It's a shorthand, it's another name, it's a nickname almost in the same way that she, her is almost a nickname for someone who is feminine in their presentation or gender orientation or whatnot, however they prefer it. So yeah, neopronouns, I just kind of explain it as it's just another way to be. It's just another thing to make somebody feel more comfortable. You don't have to like it. You don't have to understand it. You just have to understand it's what makes them feel at home in the world and makes them feel welcome in your space. Oh, Lance has found the link in the pin. Stewie's got pride, or in the to the pin. Stewie's got pride. Lance, I knew you would figure this stuff out. So, but yeah, for how neopronouns, how to approach it with people who are completely unfamiliar with it, I think I would probably just explain it to them that it's not something that's common or usual yet. But if you wanted to go on the linguist form, like what I do with my little language thing, is neither was you at one point. It would have all been thee, thou, thine. And now suddenly, we say you, it changed. Singular they was the normal until I believe it was the 18th century. We didn't really use they as much as a broad plural. And then we had some more prescriptivist grammarians who decided that it had to match. They had to be only for your numeracy match between your subject and your verb. It had to be aligned, and so therefore we couldn't use it anymore, right? Nope. But because English is a Germanic language with a Latinate imposed grammar and a ton of different loan words, we're kind of, we don't fit. Using fleur as a pronoun, that's not what I've actually encountered yet. That does not surprise me that there's one I haven't encountered yet. I keep finding them. It's wonderful fun until I started doing the research for the first time I did this presentation. I'd never seen fair either. And then I found fair is actually more commonly used in pagan communities because it is in relation to fae, which is the fairies or the fae, not Tinkerbell, but tends to be the more like earth-based kind of fairy. So yeah, it's interesting. I love seeing how they've evolved. Per is one that I just came across relatively recently. So there's a lot of neat ones. I love language. Oh, and Liz has posted in the chat a video that talks about fleur. Awesome. I will most definitely look that up and check it out. Share the resources, y'all.
And speaking of resources, I announced on our first day, we have literally thousands of dollars that we're going to be giving away through our leadership awards. And if you wanted to maybe think about doing a workshop, maybe hiring Anna and some other colleagues to do a partial day workshop for a youth group, that would be a great source of the award money. So please look up the Leadership Awards information on our website, and maybe that's a way to connect again with Anna and bring this information to another audience and maybe go into a little more detail through a more personal workshop. I hope that's okay, Anna. If I
Yeah, I love talking about language. I mean, you can probably tell that I'm kind of a nerd about this stuff. And if any of y'all on here have other questions or things to share and you want to get in touch with me, I will type down my email address in here. If I can actually type. Which apparently my keystrokes are all off here, but there we go. In the chat, show1@msu.edu. Feel free to be in touch. And there's actually quite a few colleagues I can see on here too who are part of the MSU team. So we're all happy to chat about our work and what we do around here. Anybody else? Well, it was absolutely lovely to spend time with y'all in what is my afternoon. I don't know what all y'all's time zones are, but it was great. So have a lovely rest of your day. And possibly see you tomorrow if you drop into my session then.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you at the next session after our break.